The sun still shone on an Earth that believed it was safe. It was a young member of the Galactic Consensus, a huge, old federation of alien races. The Consensus was mostly run by one group, the Cathar. The Cathar were large, slow-moving, and proud. They were not great innovators. They believed that stability was the only thing that mattered, and they thought that their way of life should last forever. Humanity was the problem. The humans had only been among the stars for a short time, but they learned too fast. They had quickly mastered fusion power, turning sunlight into endless energy, and their computers were smarter than anything the Cathar had developed in 10,000 years. The Cathar leaders, whose robes covered ancient, dusty seats of power, watched humanity with cold suspicion. They called humans volatile. They called them reckless. Really, they just called them a threat. The breaking point came when Earth refused to share its newest leap in quantum computing. The Consensus accused Earth of breaking its most important treaties. The Cathar needed no more excuse. The judgment came swiftly, without warning. It was called the Edict of Exile. Earth was declared an existential danger to galactic stability. The penalty was absolute. Humanity would be stripped of all its off-world assets, its space stations, its mining operations, and its deep space fleet. They would be forced back into the Sol system, quarantined behind a shimmering, energy-based barrier that no one could cross. It was meant to be a slow death sentence. The sky over Earth filled with the enormous, dull gray vessels of the Cathar blockade. They were slow, but they were many. Not everyone waited to die. In the chaos of the withdrawal, a small group of ships was prepared. They were not military vessels. They were old colony ships, patched up and running on borrowed time, but they were fast enough. A brilliant engineer named Ben Vance had been working on these ships for months, sensing the Cathar's fear. He knew that when a civilization decides you are a danger, you stop trying to convince them otherwise. You prepare to run. Ben stood on the bridge of the lead ship, the Hope's Flicker, watching the orbital sensors burn with alien signals. Next to him, Alice Gray, the mission's systems architect, had tears running down her cheeks, but her hands were steady on the navigation console. They had loaded their fleet not with weapons, but with knowledge. Seed banks, historical archives, every scientific paper ever written, and a new, compact fabrication system that could build anything from scratch. They also carried the best minds, doctors, physicists, coders, the people who understood that power came from the mind, not from the size of a gun. "We are ready for the final jump, Ben," Alice said, her voice a rough whisper. "We go now. The outer cordon is closing," Ben replied, his voice firm. He looked at the star map, not at the known safe routes of the Consensus, but into the vast, dark unknown of the Andromeda void. As the small, ragged human fleet accelerated, weaving through the newly deployed blockade vessels, Ken Sato, the communications officer, tapped furiously on a specialized console. He was sending a burst of coded data toward the nearest Cathar monitor station. It was a data packet designed to look like garbage, buried deep in noise. The Hope's Flicker shuddered, the lights briefly flickering as the engines strained beyond safe limits. Then the stars outside stretched and snapped back, and they were gone. Miles behind them, the Cathar monitors registered the jump, noting the vessels as lost or destroyed. Only one small automated Cathar post caught the faint single burst of human code before the energy blockade slammed shut around Earth. The message was short, encoded across only 5 bits of non-critical telemetry. "We remember. We will return."
The jump had saved them, but it put the human fleet in a terrible place. They were in the Andromeda Void, a large, cold, empty space between galaxies. The Cathar called it the Dark Void, and they had been right. There were almost no resources here. No friendly stars, no planets rich with easy metal. It was a place where things went to be forgotten. Ben Vance, the engineer who had led the escape, knew this meant the fleet could not travel far. They needed to stop and dig in. They found a dense cluster of asteroids hidden deep within a cloud of cosmic dust that blocked long-range sensors. It was not a home, but it was a place to hide and to begin. They called this cluster the Sanctuary. The first 50 years were only about survival. Every scrap of metal, every drop of water, every atom of gas had to be reused countless times. The humans learned to build smart, not big. Their ships were stripped down for parts. The people, living in cramped, recycled habitats, became masters of efficiency. They could build a powerful generator the size of a suitcase, while the Cathar still needed buildings the size of cities to do the same job. This time of extreme need changed humanity. The generation that had known Earth was gone. The new generation only knew the void. They were raised on the twin commandments of the exiles: never forget the exile, and never stop advancing. Progress was their revenge. After a century, the Ark fleet was no longer just a few colony ships. It had grown into a vast, hidden civilization. It was a network of spinning habitats and automated factories, all built into the darkness of the asteroid cluster. They called this new civilization Nova Terra. Chloe Davis was born in the Sanctuary 100 years after the exile. She was a systems architect like Alice Gray before her, and she had spent her life trying to solve one problem: the Cathar's slow, massive warp drives. The Cathar could only travel predictable, straight lines in space. They expected everyone else to do the same. Chloe led the team that created the breakthrough. They called it the Ghost Drive. It did not warp space. Instead, it used the newest generation of quantum computers, the same technology that had caused the exile, to fold space for a very short moment. It allowed a ship to disappear and reappear almost instantly, a few light years away. The jump was short, but it was untraceable. The ship's energy signature vanished completely during the jump. The Cathar could travel long distances in days, but they always left a huge energy trail. The humans could only jump a few stars at a time, but they left nothing behind. They were ghosts in the void. With the Ghost Drive installed on a new class of scout ships, sleek, black, and silent, Nova Terra was ready to look outward. The small empire they had built in secret was powerful, unified, and technologically sharp. They were no longer desperate survivors. They were a weapon honed by a century of isolation. Adam Cole, a young scout pilot, stood before the council. He was ready to take the first ghost-driven ship, the Phantom Blade, out of the Sanctuary and back toward the worlds of the galactic consensus. "We know the risks, Pilot Cole," Chloe Davis told him. "If you are caught, all of Nova Terra is exposed. We built this empire for this moment." "I know, Architect Davis," he replied simply. He looked out the window at the dense, star-filled blackness. "We are not looking for a fight. We are looking for a door." The Phantom Blade slipped away from the Sanctuary without a sound. It was not heading for Earth, which was still blocked by the exile barrier. It was heading straight for the nearest edge of the galactic consensus territory, moving in untraceable, silent jumps. Humanity was coming home, but not to ask for forgiveness. They were coming to collect on a promise made 200 years ago. Adam Cole gripped the controls of the Phantom Blade. A century and a half after the exile, he was the first human to see a real galactic consensus world that was not part of the Sanctuary. The viewscreen showed a planet called Ilara. It was a quiet green world, home to the Tlon species. They were gentle, short creatures who had long been under the heavy thumb of the Cthar. Ilara was a minor colony, kept poor and controlled for the benefit of the ruling species. Adam had been watching the system for 3 rotations. His ship, small and dark, used the ghost drive for tiny, near-instantaneous jumps, placing him in and out of the sensor net before any detection systems could register a blip. It was like breathing through solid rock. Then, the silence broke. 3 massive cigar-shaped Cthar patrol cruisers appeared from warp space, trailing the bright, predictable energy signature that humanity had learned to despise. They were hunting Tlon rebels, small groups that fought back against the harsh Cthar rules. The cruiser's heavy energy weapons began firing on a small Tlon cargo hauler that was trying to run for the surface. The hauler was no match. It shuddered, its shields flickering, ready to explode. Adam knew this was the moment. He activated the transmission beacon and sent a single coded message on a frequency only Novatera used. Contact confirmed, hostility confirmed. Within 3 minutes, 3 more human ships materialized. They did not glide in or appear slowly, they simply were. One moment the void was empty. The next 3 sleek black hulls, commanded by Captain Liam Kelly, were sitting in perfect formation between the Cthar and the doomed Tlon vessel. The Cthar sensors screamed in protest. The ships had 0 signature until they existed in real space. Liam Kelly, commanding the lead ship, the Reclaimer, felt the familiar cold rush of the first real fight. He had been raised on the stories of exile, not on memories of Earth. His purpose was simple. They had been called a threat, and now they would live up to the title. "Targeting solutions confirmed," Liam ordered. His voice was calm. "Weapons fire is to be precise. Disable engines and targeting arrays only. Do not destroy the hulls. We want them to talk." The human ships were not armed with clumsy plasma cannons like the Cthar. They used railguns, weapons that fired solid metal slugs at speeds no shield could truly stop. They were fast, clean, and terrifyingly accurate. The 3 Cthar cruisers turned their massive bows toward the intruders. They demanded surrender in a loud, echoing burst of static that shook the human comms. Liam Kelly ignored them. Before the Cthar could even align their main weapons, the human ships executed a dizzying series of ghost jumps. They vanished, reappeared behind the Cthar vessels, fired a burst of rail slugs into the engines and targeting arrays, and vanished again. It was less a battle and more a surgical 3-second demolition. The Cthar ships went dead in the water. Their primary engines failed. Their large, slow-moving turrets were jammed or melted. The huge, arrogant vessels were now just sitting ducks. The whole encounter was over before the lead Cthar commander even finished shouting his demands. On the small Tlon hauler, the creatures were paralyzed. They had expected to die. Instead, 3 unknown ships had appeared, moved like lightning, and shut down the tyrannical Cthar patrol that had ruled their sector for generations. Their shock was complete. Liam Kelly's ship moved toward the disabled Tlon hauler. A video feed was sent, showing Liam, a man with calm, hard eyes, standing against a backdrop of deep space. "To the Tlon people of Ilara, we are Novatera. We were exiled by the consensus. We offer you protection. No more Cthar, no more tyranny." On one of the now crippled Cthar cruisers, the captain stared at his blank sensors. He didn't understand what had happened. The enemy ships were too small, too fast. They left no trace. It was impossible. His ship's auto-report system, working through backup channels, finally managed to send a panicked message back towards the Central Cthar Authority. "Unidentified hostile force, high velocity, 0 signature, requesting immediate fleet support." The report, deep in the consensus databanks, landed on the desk of a dusty Kthar admiral. The admiral glanced at the report's impossible numbers and the mention of zero signature. He dismissed it with a slow wave of his hand, muttering, "More local colony hysteria. Earth was dealt with. Nothing can move that fast." The admiral was wrong. Something could move that fast, and that something had just landed its first punch. The incident at Ilara was a small cut, but it bled hope across the galaxy. The Kthar, who had ruled the galactic consensus for countless years, were suddenly not invincible. The Tlan people quickly allied with Nova Terra, giving the humans vital maps and deep knowledge of the Kthar weaknesses. Other oppressed groups, the tall, quiet Vorn and the quick, small Reth, also reached out, tired of the Kthar's heavy-handed rule. The Kthar leaders finally realized they were not dealing with simple rebels. The data from the crippled patrol cruisers was too clear. The enemy ships were too small, too fast, and they used a movement technology that should not exist. The memory of Earth's exile, buried deep in their files, was dragged out and studied with fear. A massive response was prepared. The Kthar gathered their largest fleet in centuries. It was a collection of 50 enormous capital ships, slow-moving fortresses meant to crush resistance through sheer size and firepower. They moved with predictable slowness, heading straight toward the systems where Nova Terra had begun to establish its small sphere of influence. They were coming to end the human problem forever. Captain Liam Kelly, leading the human fleet, watched the Kthar approach on the strategic display. The alien ships looked like 50 mountain ranges moving through space. The human fleet, in comparison, was composed of 30 fast, sleek destroyers, each one roughly the size of one Kthar ship's main engine block. Chloe Davis, now the chief tactical strategist, spoke to Liam from the sanctuary. "Their strength is their armor, Captain. Their weakness is their rigidity. They expect a war of attrition. We will give them a war of shadows." The great battle took place near a barren star system known only as the Eye of the Void. The human ships, guided by the flawless calculations of Nova Terra's Grotham computers, took up positions outside the main battle area. When the Kthar fleet arrived, they found nothing. They waited, massive and impatient. Then Liam Kelly gave the order. The human ships did not warp in. They used the Ghost Drive in a dazzling display of tactical blinking. One moment a ship was 1,000 kilometers away, the next it was right against the hull of a Kthar capital ship, firing its railguns at a precise weak spot, the energy conduits near the main plasma cannon barrels. The rail slugs, moving at near light speed, ripped through the heavy alien armor like paper. The human ships would fire a quick, devastating volley and then blink away, reappearing milliseconds later near another target or miles away to evade counterfire. It was not a continuous fight. It was hundreds of individual, surgical strikes happening faster than the Kthar command structure could process. The massive Kthar cannons, designed to shoot at slow-moving capital ships, could not track the human vessels. They fired massive, powerful plasma blasts into empty space, wasting energy and burning their own ships by mistake. Liam Kelly, fighting in the thick of the fray, watched the Kthar dreadnought, a ship 3 times the size of old Earth's largest aircraft carrier, shudder as 3 human destroyers blinked around it in a perfect triangle, each one disabling a crucial system. The dreadnought went dark, its weapons silent. It was not destroyed, but it was crippled. The Kthar commander, seeing his ships being dismantled without ever touching the enemy, screamed for a retreat. But the humans had learned another lesson from exile: logistics. The Kthar retreat was as slow and predictable as their attack. As they tried to turn their vast ships toward the warp jump points, the human destroyers hunted them down, disabling engines and leaving the giant hulls adrift. Of the 50 Kthar capital ships, only 3 managed to escape, carrying the news of a total and humiliating defeat.
Nova Terra had lost only one ship, the result of a pilot error, not Kthar firepower. The victory was absolute. More importantly, it was seen. The Tlon and the Vorn spread the images of the battle across the consensus comms network. The invincible Kthar fleet, the symbol of galactic tyranny, had been broken by the exiles of Earth. In the space of just 2 years, the galactic consensus crumbled. Systems rebelled. Species long held captive broke free. The Kthar were suddenly fighting 100 small wars across their vast territory, and they could not spare the fleet to fight the humans. Nova Terra was no longer a hidden colony. It was the core of a new, rapidly growing network of allies. Humanity had returned to the galaxy not as a beggar, but as the master strategist, demanding respect with every silent ghost jump and every perfect railgun shot.
2 years after the Battle of the Eye of the Void, the human empire, now officially called Nova Terra, stood ready. The old galactic consensus was a shell. The Keathar had been driven back to their home worlds, fighting for their own survival against the new alliances humanity had built. The Talon, the Vorn, and dozens of other species looked to Nova Terra for protection and leadership. The small, desperate colony had become the central power of the galaxy. There was only one place left to go: the Sol System, Earth's home. The voyage back was silent for Commander Liam Kelly. He was now the fleet admiral of a powerful armada, but the sight of the sun filled him with a strange mix of pride and old anger. He was sailing past the outer sentinel stations that had once belonged to Earth, but were now controlled by the Keathar garrison, the very same ones who maintained the exile barrier. "Barrier integrity, 99%, reported Chloe Davis, who was aboard Liam's flagship, the Vindicator. "The quantum resonance field is still active. It is stronger than anything we have faced." "But we are better now," Liam said, looking at the distant, familiar blue marble of Earth. The planet looked peaceful, almost unaware of the empire that had bloomed in the void in its name. The Keathar forces guarding Sol were small, mostly automated drone ships and 2 aging patrol cruisers. They were symbolic, meant only to enforce the old judgment. They quickly realized that the silent, black fleet approaching them was not a diplomatic mission. The final battle was a mercy. Liam Kelly did not waste time. He used a coordinated ghost jump maneuver to place his fleet surrounding the barrier's main power relays on a distant icy moon. The railguns fired once, and the power grid was vaporized. The exile barrier, the cage that had held humanity captive for nearly 2 centuries, shimmered, cracked, and vanished in a cascade of silent light. The Keathar patrol ships tried to escape, but Liam's destroyers simply disabled them and took them prisoner. The exile was over. The first ship to land on Earth's surface was not the Vindicator. It was a simple transport, carrying Liam Kelly and Chloe Davis. They landed near the old consensus capital, a place of tall, severe buildings that had not changed in 200 years. They were met by a small group of old leaders, humans who had stayed behind and worked under the Keathar rule. The head of the old Earth Council was an aged man named Dean. He looked defeated, his eyes full of fear and shame. Dean bowed low. We did not know you survived, Commander. The consensus told us you were destroyed. We beg for mercy." Liam Kelly did not offer a hand or a harsh word. He simply looked at the man who represented the weakness that had nearly destroyed them all. "Mercy is for the weak, Dean. We are not weak. We are not here for revenge against Earth.
We are here because Earth forgot what it meant to be human, to never give up and always create something better. Chloe Davis stepped forward. "We have no interest in your old planet politics, Dean. Earth is safe, but it is no longer the center. The galaxy needs order, not fear. That order comes from Nova Terra now." The new human empire was founded not on blood, but on the principles learned in the void: efficiency, unity, and relentless progress. The ghost drive and the quantum computers became the basis for a new golden age. Humans introduced rapid, traceless travel and clean energy technology to their allies, lifting up species that the Cathar had kept poor. Liam Kelly and Chloe Davis oversaw the transfer of power. The old galactic consensus was renamed the Galactic Alliance, led by the Nova Terra Council, which included the best minds from the Talon, the Vorn, and even the moderate factions of the Cathar, who saw the coming change. Humanity commanded the empire, not by size or age, but by technological supremacy and a powerful memory of what it meant to be oppressed. Earth was given a seat on the council, but it was just one seat among many.